R.I.P. Gallifrey. Again. Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my review of Series 12, Episode 2 of Doctor Who, Spyfall Part 2. Just to say, there will be spoilers in this, so if you want to avoid spoilers, look away now. Do not watch the rest of this video. There will be spoilers. I've kind of already put one in the opening before that, but you just have to forgive me that, sorry. I was apprehensive about going into this because I really enjoyed the first part of this. And Doctor Who, admittedly particularly under Moffat, but also a little bit under Russell T Davies, had a tendency with two-parters to have some really good first parts, and then some part twos which really let them down. Like I said, that was stronger with Moffat than it was with Russell T Davies, but it wasn't, completely absent from Russell T Davies. But when you're thinking about it, you're thinking of things like Hellbent and Heaven Sent, World Enough and Time and The Doctor Falls. And it's not always that the second parts are bad episodes, they're just disappointing given how great the first parts were. And I thought the first part of Spyfall was fantastic. A really strong start to the episode, to the season, even, to the series. So I was a little apprehensive going into this one. Would it live up to the first part, or would it disappoint? Even if it was okay, if it was only okay, that would be disappointing when you got a two-parter, and the second half of it's a bit lackluster. So, did it succeed? Well, another thing I was thinking beforehand, I was a little bit apprehensive because it had a different director, and I wasn't sure how that would gel with it. If you got a different director of Part 1 and Part 2, when we had the Monk trilogy in Series 10, that had different writers and different directors, and I felt that suffered quite a lot from that. So I wasn't really sure what was... I was just a little bit apprehensive. And it is a very different beast, this episode. It does feel different. And yet, it still somehow gives us a satisfying conclusion to the plot lines and threads that were introduced. It didn't feel like, okay, this is just another different story with the kind of basically a tale of two halves where the second part doesn't bear that much relation to the first. The first was just set up to get us to the second part. Doesn't feel like that. Definitely feels like the conclusion of that story, which is good, but it still felt very different. We had, the setup was very different. The first one was very much a spy adventure. This is the Doctor going through a time-travelling sort of adventure, going to various different time periods and making her way back to the present. You've got that, which makes it feel very different. You've got the historical figures which feature into it, which feel very different. And of course, you've got the revealed master, which feels very different as well. So it does feel very different, but all the plot threads and all the menace from the first episode do carry over to this episode. And I think they succeeded in that really well. Now, first of all, I want to talk a bit about the Master, because in my last review, I didn't really talk about him that much. I talked about the reveal and how the reveal made me feel, but I didn't talk about the performance, and we hadn't seen much of it. That performance we got at the end of the last episode, I was so intrigued by that. Absolutely. And I was really keen to see more. I was apprehensive, though, still, because I'm not entirely sure that it was right to bring the Master back at this point. It's only been effectively one season since we last saw the Master. One whole season we've had since the Master was last in it. It's, less than 20 episodes since the Master has last been in it. So I was a little bit apprehensive, but more so than the limited amount of time that's passed, I was more apprehensive about what they would do with the character, because Missy went through an arc, and it was a redemption arc, and it was a great arc. I loved Missy's redemption arc. And if they just undo it all now, I was really, and I still am a little bit, really worried about that. Now, I think they have laid some things in this episode that may appease me a little bit on that, in terms of what might have pushed the Master back to being how he is in as we see him here. But we'll come to that. We'll come to the revelations that come towards the end of the episode in a minute. Just sticking on his character for the moment, I was really intrigued by him in that opening thing last week, and I was kind of wondering. I didn't want him to be too maniacal because he had that kind of giddiness to him, and I liked it, and I saw glimmers of stuff I really liked in that opening scene, and I hoped the bits that I really liked would carry over, which were the more menacing aspects, and the giddiness wouldn't play as much. And I think, for the most part, that was what they did. I'm really liking Sasha's interpretation of the character. The only time I would say it went too OTT, too over the top, was when he first confronted the Doctor in the 1800s, came in his long coat and stuff, and holding that miniaturizer and miniaturizing people. I thought he was a little bit over the top there, but when he had those dark, menacing moments, especially with the Doctor, I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I really hope we see some more of him this season, and we don't have to wait a whole nother till season 13 to see him again. I hope he pops up, mid-season, towards the end of the season, maybe in the season finale, something. I want to see him again this season because I think he's really good. Did anybody else think when he was, because he started out on the plane, he had a bit of stubble, but he didn't have a full beard. By the end of the time he was a Nazi, he had like a full beard. Did anybody else think that maybe he'd end the episode having lived through some more time, having shaved it into a goatee? Or was that just me? Missed opportunity there, I think, to shave his beard into a goatee for that bit where he came back and he'd been living through 70 years of the 20th century. Missed opportunity there. I think this is the best performance we've seen from Jodie Whittaker. There were some really good moments in this. The moment where the Master makes her kneel. I love what she did. I thought she was really powerful acting there. Just the look, sort of the drain, the defeat on her face was the quietness of her in those moments. There was no witty comebacks at that point. There was when she realised that he wasn't, didn't have all the information, of course, but in that moment there was that kind of somberness to her. I thought it was phenomenal acting. And then, of course, towards the end of the episode as well, after she finds out that, okay, we'll come to the revelation now. After she finds out that Gallifrey is lying in ruins and her people have died, presumably, again, that the bit in the scene in the TARDIS after that, and when she's finding it and when she's looking at the hologram of the Master that he's left her, all really great stuff from Jodie Whittaker, and I want to see more of that. That is really good stuff. We didn't get any substance from her. We got the sort of surface level Doctor last episode. We got some real deeper stuff, I think, this episode. Another person I didn't talk about last time, I don't know why I didn't, I just forgot. Lenny Henry as Barton, very good. I thought he's just so good at playing the menacing. Most people think of Lenny Henry as a comedian, and he is a comedian. He does stand-up comedy and does a lot of comedy roles as well. But he's absolutely shown that he can do deadly serious roles here, and the menace and he brings to this, absolutely brilliant. Especially when he's tying his own mother to a chair. Menacing and not over the top at all, not camp, just absolutely chilling menacingness. One thing I wasn't sure how to feel about, and having thought about it now for about 10 or 15 minutes after the episode has finished, was the resolution to the cliffhanger, and in the sense the danger on the plane. I like it, actually, because I wasn't sure. Initially I thought maybe it's a bit of a cop-out, but the way they did it, and it could have been, but the way they did it I kind of quite liked. It didn't feel too much of a cheat, kind of felt earned, because it could have felt like, okay, the Doctor has left them these messages from the future, and it solves it like that. But there had to be, and it, if it had just been her popping up on a screen telling them exactly what to do, I think that would have been that straight away. But the fact that I think the TARDIS team had their own agency within that scene, and that Ryan initially had to discover the clues, and then beyond that, the message fizzled out without finishing it, and then they had to work it out themselves. That came to a quite satisfying conclusion to that. It got them out of the initial danger situation, but which of course we all knew they weren't going to die. That was obvious, even when the last part one finished. We knew they weren't going to die, so it was quite. I like the way they got out of that. But I can see why some people might think it's a bit of a cop-out, but I would argue it's not, because the characters had their own agency within that as well, especially Ryan. They had to put in some effort. It didn't just feel like, okay, click a button, it's all finished. The bit that did feel a little like that, though, was the conclusion to the I've forgotten what the creature's called now, but the takeover of humanity by the other dimensions aliens. That felt a little too click a button done type thing, which is something that happens all the time with Doctor Who, and it's a shame. And it kind of would have left me on a bit of a downer of the episode if the other stuff that came after it didn't happen. But in terms of the resolution of the plot, I wanted to see the Doctor stop it, but what we got was the Doctor setting off from the past in the TARDIS she'd stolen from the Master, and then she just turns up and it's all already finished. I wanted to see her, sort of like we saw the stuff on the plane, her setting up the stuff on the plane at the end. Something like that, but for her stopping Barton's and the Master's plan would have been good, but we didn't get that. So, little disappointed with the ending, but still, but, you know, that's, and that would have left me on a bit of a downer if the other stuff hadn't come next. And what saved it for me in the end was the revelation, the massive revelation at the end, that Gallifrey was in ruins, and the Doctor goes and looks, and it absolutely is. We see the Citadel all crumbled, presumably nobody there. Does feel a little bit repetitious in the sense that, okay, Gallifrey's gone again. Well, Gallifrey's not gone. Gallifrey's actually still there this time, but the Time Lords are gone again. It's kind of like back where we were in 2005. I hope they do something different with it this time, but it's still such a big revelation. And even more than that was the revelation that the Master did it because of something he found out that we don't know about, to do with a timeless child. This is the big story arc, and I really hope it's so exciting. I love the potential of it. I really hope they don't mess it up, because where this could go, my mind is racing with possibilities. None of which will probably end up to be the ones. They'll probably completely surprise me with something else. But I love getting drip fed bits of the history of the Doctor and the history of the Time Lords and things like that. So what we might find out from this, there's some kind of mystery, some kind of lie that all Time Lords have been told. That is it meant to be specifically about the Master and the Doctor, or is this about Time Lord Society? I think it's about, from the dialogue, it sounds like it's about the origins of Time Lord Society. So what's the lie? What is it? Was it not Rassilon that started Time Lord Society? Is there something else? Who is the Timeless Child? What's it all about? It's so intriguing, and I really hope it doesn't get completely forgotten until the season finale. There were a couple of fair and balanced review and all. There were a couple of things that made this slightly of a weaker episode for me than the previous episode, and that would be and they're such small nitpicky things that it's still a good episode. It's not a disappointment from the first episode. But there were just a couple of things that bugged me a little bit. Like the inside of the Master's TARDIS just looked like, and I know he made it that to fool them from the previous episode. It looks like the inside of what the outside looks like. But I just would have liked it if it had reverted to something where it looked like a TARDIS console. And I mean, we kind of saw a console. I just would have liked to see a proper Master TARDIS interior, basically. Disappointed we didn't see that. And the other thing that the only thing in this episode, in fact, that made me cringe was the laser shoes and Graham using them. Didn't work. didn't suit the tone of the rest of the episode. Didn't fit in with the tone of the rest of the episode and the seriousness of their situation at the time. But, that's really the only two major nitpicks I've got. That and the one brief moment where I thought the Master was a little bit too OTT. Other than that, I had a really fun time watching this episode. Some really good stuff there. Some great acting from Jodie. Some great acting from Sasha. Some brilliant setup for things to come. Solid story arc stuff, which we were lacking so much last year. Definitely very much looking forward to where that goes. Look, let me know what you thought of the episode. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear. Did you enjoy it? Do you think it lived up to the first part? If you liked the first part. If you didn't like the first part, do you think this improved on it? Let me know. I want to hear all your thoughts about this episode. I'll be back next Sunday for another review of the next episode, and I will see you then. Bye.